We can even use vernacular.
Oh.
So are you able to run through the questions before or it says? Boss? Yeah, okay. It's me.
He called my friend and told her, how is she? So is she dating? So then she was like, no, she's actually been alone for a while.
Yeah. It's me. The forgetful and it's her. Maxwell Mumba.
Fiona Mumba.
Do I go first?
Okay.
Now let us start. You start.
Ladies first. We met from church. There's a church I was going to that was a first Deliverance Church. Deliverance Church, Zambia. By then I was staying in Helen Kaunda. Then after we shifted, we went to PHI. After PHI, we had to go to a church nearby, and that was Bethel Temple, if I'm not mistaken. He was in the praise team by then he was a worship leader. But there was nothing between us. He was actually seeing someone at that time. He was in a very serious relationship at that time. So it was just like, oh, the praise, just those things, yeah. Then after, there were just certain things that happened with the church. So there was like a dispute. The other church went and the other church. So we went separate ways. He went with dad. I think I went with mom. Yeah. So then from there again, it so happened that one of my friends invited me to the church where he was going to, because there he was acting as the assistant pastor. That was Prophet Daniel's church. So then when we went there, you know how us women are discernment. So when we went there, he was seated in the front seat. Then it was like time for prophecy. So we were standing. Then he looked behind. I also looked in front. I was like, oh, that's Pastor Max, and he looks different. You know, just like a month's passed, but he was looking, you know, a fine man. A fine man. Then all gained and all. So then I looked. Then my heart just skipped, like, you know, from nowhere. There's just something that I felt. Discernment, obviously, as women. Then also him, like, I think he just gave me a cousin, like, oh, you're here, like he was surprised. After the service, he followed me outside. He was like, oh, how is life going? You know, me being a man of God, I'm like, oh, no, everything is fine. So we waited for our cab. We went to the car park. I didn't know that he called my friend. He called my friend and told her, how is she? So is she dating? So then she was like, no, she's actually been alone for a while. And she doesn't even want to date at this time. So he was like, no, you give me her number. That's how, I didn't even know. She didn't even tell me that she gave him my number. Because for her, she was like, I feel like you need to settle anytime soon. You need someone serious. So then I went home. Like after 2 days, then he sent me a message. This is Pastor Max. We met at Prophet Daniel's church. So me thinking, oh, it's a man of God. Like we started interacting. You can find maybe he saw something and he needs to pray for you. And then, because he's a people person, then Prophetess Mwaka from the USA was coming. Then she was launching her women's ministry. So she was like, Pastor Max, I want you to find me ushers. And so he was like, okay, there are ushers I know. And then he called me. He was like, I want you to be one of the ushers at this church. So I was like, no, that's a good idea. So he would come and pick me every day, drop me home. So we started like bonding. But then, you know, you could tell that this man of God, just like that. And that was somewhere around June, July. Then that was the time he was bathing Salvation Embassy. And that was the time, like we started, you know, he didn't say like, okay, I'm asking you out and all, but actions speak louder than words. So I could just tell that, okay, here is something. Then he was trying to say it, but he was all shy. So me thinking like, this church boy, he's not getting straight to the point. Then there were times I would just text him like, oh, today I had such a dream. He was always available. He was always available. He would interpret dreams and all that. But I think before we knew it, we were dating. Yeah, that's how we met, from church.
Well, yes, I don't even know what to start from. Looking at, I think the first lady said it all. Yeah, so we were in the same youth ministry actually at the time, and I was in the praise as well. So unfortunately, the church that we were under, split. So she went the other side, I went to the other side, and I think it was after 2-3 years that, she came to the other church where I was at. I was actually more closer to her best friend than herself. So, yeah, I mean, nothing intentional about the friend, but obviously, when the friend brought her to church, I was so interested. And, I was just so happy to see this lady that I had been with. At some point, we were in the same youth ministry, and now I come to see her 3 years later, and like he said, I think we started dating before even I proposed. I think dating starts with actions now. There's nothing like, oh, I love you, I want to be in a relationship with you. I think it all starts by actions, so they say. So that's how we met. I think yeah, we started dating, and we just dated for a few months, by the way. I think within 6 months, we tied the knot.
They were happy, but then, like me, we come from an SDA. My family, they are all SDAs. But for me, I just started going to a Pentecostal church. I took myself there when I was young, like in Sunday school, because my friends would be playing and they'll say, oh, well, we're doing Christmas carols at church. So for me, it was like new, because Seventh Days don't celebrate Christmas. So they were like, let's go. And that was the time we were in Sunday school. Let's go to church. So I was like, okay, I'll go. Then it was so interesting. And the Sunday school teachers loved us. Oh, you guys are active on Saturday and Sunday. We want you to come. You act as the mother to Jesus, as Mary. And then I acted, and so I acted as Mary, the mother to Jesus. Then I was just enjoying it. Then after some time, I had to join the church. So for me, I became Pentecostal, from a Pentecostal girl from the time I was in Sunday school. And then from there, but Mom would always say, you're so committed to church. You're so committed to church. So one day you'll find yourself marrying a pastor, because this commitment that you have, you'll find yourself marrying a pastor when you've grown. So we would even laugh about it. Then after some time, as I kept growing and growing, anyway, everything passed the teenage age. So I told my mother, oh, this is what's going on. This man loves me. So she was like, but he wants to marry you. It's been 6 months. So I was like, no, we've actually known each other from way back, but nothing was going on. So then she was like, okay, what does he do? He's a pastor. So she was just like, she couldn't tell me, but I could just see from her eyes. Even my family were like, hey, pastors, you find the offering is 300 kwacha. What is my child going to be eating? You know, those are the things that were running through her head. But me, I just kept telling her everything will be fine, because this is what God wants for me. I was telling my mother. And now she was surprised. Bio, how do you know? I was like, don't worry, I'll be happy. This is what God wants for me. And then from there, she just had to accept. And here we are. But you know how it is marrying a pastor, especially when the church is just starting. You're thinking your child, what will happen? Those people, the women in church, you know the way they talk. Are you going to be managing with your small body, dealing with these people who will be looking older than you? But I just kept emphasizing to say, this is what God wants for me. And she did believe in me. And then it happened.
Well, being a man, I think it was easier, because obviously when you tell family members that you found someone to marry, and you see, God just gave us that favor in a way that by the time I was proposing, marriage to her, I was actually living in a one-room house. It was in Ibex by then, and I just had a bed and obviously a TV and the two-plate stove. But can you imagine that when I told my family that I wanted to marry, they first looked at what I had because I didn't have much. But I mean, they had no option but to accept. And guess what? God just came through from that proposal. I think within a week or two, I found myself in a two-bedroom house at that time. So I think my proposal to her really came with a lot of favor. Of course, there were a few family members, especially sometimes sisters. They would be so resistant in such a way that they'll be asking you questions. Are you ready? Are you sure you want to marry this one? Is she the one? There was a bit of resistance in the first place, but eventually we put through, and that's how it was.
Well, what happened was he kept talking about the marriage, and then sometimes he would just like play with my fingers, I don't know, maybe he was doing some calculations, I don't know. He would play with my fingers sometimes, and then it just so happened that, did we go together?
To buy a ring?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I don't really remember, but he went. But there was nothing like, oh, we call families this and that. No, he just first surprised me alone. He surprised me alone, like, oh, I want to marry you. Then, and the ring finger was just okay. Yeah, so then he was like, but from here, we would now want to do it in church. Yeah, so then I was like, oh, I was happy. Yeah, and then from there, we were just getting ready now to tell our parents, and then our spiritual parents. Then from there, we had to do the official engagement in church.
Well, so like she was saying, I would play with her fingers just to, to make a few measurements here and there. So I knew her ring size at that point. And I think I went into town alone, bought a ring. And I think I invited her for lunch, surprise her, just the two of us. We didn't really have like that engagement where you'd call people and, surprise someone like in front of everyone. Well, after that, we did it in church. I think that time we had just started the ministry. That's when I planted the church, because my spiritual father then told me, you can't just go ahead and, start a church without marriage. So we had to do it in church. I think our engagement was actually the first engagement in church when we established the ministry. Yeah, pretty much.
It was like what he said. Mine was just full of favor. Yeah, so for me, my auntie just had to order a dress for me from China. Yeah, and I was still small even at that time. So then China bodies, they are slim people. So she just examined me, and it was a surprise, because we're like, okay, let's try to hire the dress. So then she was like, no, you can't hire a dress. This is a wedding dress, one of your best days. So you have to get a new dress. And for sure, she just got it online for me. And she said, I have a surprise for you. And then she showed me, this is your dress. And it was very new. I didn't even spend anything. Yeah, that's just how lucky or favored, blessed I was.
Well, I'm coming from a family where there have been a lot of marriages, but not weddings. So the difference is, marriages, sometimes people just start cohabiting and call it marriage. So for a good 20 years, which is like 2 decades, there had been no wedding, like white wedding in my family. Yeah, so obviously when we said that we wanted to have a wedding, we had a couple of people that came on board, just tried to, help. They had to sew into our wedding. And obviously we decided to go for an outdoor wedding. That's what we wanted, the both of us. And a beautiful place, of course. And just seeing her, one incident before I go there, usually it's the groom that waits for the bride. But I think in my case, it was the bride that waited for the groom. Unfortunately, because sometimes tellers can be so funny. I had ordered the suit. It was a tailor-made suit, I think for like 3 months before the wedding, and it only came an hour before the church service. And unfortunately, the jacket was actually small. Now imagine everyone is at the venue waiting, for the groom to be there, and the bride should come later. But for us, it was vice versa. So obviously there were a bit of tempers here there. But seeing her walking down the aisle was just something that was so mesmerizing. It was so beautiful. I think one of the best moments of my life ever. I was so emotional. I'm not an emotional person, but I was. Yeah. Well, so with my tailor, I lived near the market. And when he brought the jacket, it was too small. So he quickly rushed to a tailor that I knew nearby. And he obviously resolved the jacket issue. So he had it adjusted within 30 minutes. So we drove to the venue, which was about 30 minutes away from my house. So we resolved that one.
It's every woman's dream. Then for me, it was my uncle and my mother that were walking me down, both of them. Because they were like, no, let the uncle do it. Then my mom was like, I also want to do it. So it so happened that both of them were holding me. It was, it was nice. A dream come true. Marriage is yeah, so I was like, okay, this is it. We are here. I was happy. Seven years, 2 children. Prayer, okay, above it all prayer, but we also, like him, he doesn't keep things at heart. Whether it's church, whether it's his family, his siblings, or even to me, he's a person he talks things out. He doesn't keep anything inside. So you find you've done something that has not made him happy, but then you are just okay with it because you don't know, oh, I wronged someone. But then he'll just come and tell you, Fifi, I'm not happy with this. And then for him, when he talks, he feels relieved. Like for me, I'm emotional sometimes, so you find that I can't really tell him face to face. I'll just write a long message. So long as it has gone, even if where he's driving, at least maybe he will stop somewhere, he will read, and he will know when I get home, she was not happy with this. I think that has really helped us. Because in the home, the rate of divorce is because people keep a lot of things at heart. Then the time they realize that I need to say it out, you find they will kill each other because it's just too much. Yeah, so that's how we resolve. And we pray above it all.
Well, 2 things that I appreciate. Before I go there, let me talk about the issue of communication. I'm glad that she brought it out where she talked about, sending me a text. So we're 2 different people, of course. For me, I would say it out whenever I feel like saying it out. But for her, she would communicate via text. I think that was one of the most difficult things for me in the first years of marriage, because I would think, but why can't she just say it? Why would she send me a text? But then my counselor, told me, he says, no, allow a woman in whichever way she feels like communicating. Yeah, so I think what has kept us is that kind of communication, we understand each other. And 2 things that I appreciate about her is, number one, she's a very understanding woman. I think over the years, the Lord has been so faithful to us. But of course, in the first years of marriage, we're not all that stable financially, and should always understand. But now, the Lord has established us. We're able to afford whatever we can. And now she's not one person that met me when I had everything. I had nothing, and she accepted me as I was. So I appreciate that about her. And secondly, I just love how she mothers our children. I think she's the best mother. My wife would do anything for the children, so that just makes me, safe to say, even if I'm not there, my children are very safe. Yeah.
He's a loving husband, not just to me, but his family and my family. He loves people, There are times when we have the last money in the house, but a family member will call and say, I have this and this problem. Because of the big heart that he has, he will help out. And he's a good father. And that's what I have always prayed for. Lord, if you are to give me a husband, give me someone that will really love my children. He's a good father. Sometimes people even say, are you married? Because you're always moving with your daughter, because he always has time for children. It's better I stay home and I'm cooking. I'm okay with it. So I love him for that. I appreciate him for that. And he loves me. Yeah, he's a loving man.
Well, she always addresses me as babe. Of course, this is every man's desire, not by name. I think there are times she would address me as babe, that's romantic. And there are times she addresses me as pastor. So I think that is very rare for a my booster to use such a term. You'd obviously hear that from other people, but for your own wife to call you pastor, it means she differentiates the two offices that I carry. So there are times I'm a husband to her, and there are times I'm a pastor to her. Yes.
He calls me I'm Fiona, he calls me Fifi. He calls me Fifi, so it's a romantic word. It's unique for me because many people are called different names, but me, I have for me, it's like a traditional love name. Yeah. So he calls me Fifi, do this, do that, So I like that.
Okay. Okay, 2 lessons. One of the things that I've learned over the years, we're clocking 8 years actually this year, October, in marriage. Yeah, so 2 things I've learned over the years is forgiveness. That's the first thing. I say this all the time, even to the couples that I counsel, to say, if you can't forgive, do not marry. Because, we go through challenges and problems, in marriage. Members say, so which simply means the trees that are close to each other will always, have issues. Somehow it's like that. But forgiveness obviously is the priority that, we've kept in our marriage, and that I have learned. Then secondly, I have learned to be understanding. There are times in marriage, obviously your friend is not okay, but you have to understand, obviously for her. Sometimes we feel women don't do much, especially if somebody is home and they're not working. You feel, no, because I bring the income, they do nothing. But not knowing that there's actually so much work out there, even just raising children and making sure. I don't actually do homework, she does the homework. So, understanding, really.
I always tell people to say, if you are not ready to forgive, you can't get married, because love is also for forgiveness. You have to learn to forgive, and also having a very big heart, because you will find maybe my relatives will come and we have certain rules in the house, they will do the opposite, and you're scared this is risky for my marriage. Then you find even for him. But when we sit down in the bedroom, we just tell ourselves all these things will pass. At the end of the day, it's just us, the two of us, So understanding, forgiveness, these two. Well, I've heard many people say the pastor is the one who's called and not the wife. But for me, I feel even in a certain way, even as pastors' wives have been called, because for you to really understand that man, for you to really understand the church, it's because you also have that calling in you. You're hearing that voice from God. And when you're hearing that voice from God, you tend to just love and understand everyone. It's not easy, but the blessings of the Lord add no sorrow. It's definitely not easy, but you have to just have a big heart, know what you want, and then, yes, he's a man of God, but at home, he's a husband. So when at home he's a husband, you're able to talk about the things that maybe don't make you happy in church, or the things that you can change in church, because at home he's that husband. But I see for some people, even at home, they want to put that fear in a man, so like that it doesn't really help. You just have to be free with your husband and love him. When you love him, you will even accept and appreciate his calling. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, before I hit to the call of God to go into full-time ministry, I actually worked as an accountant. So I've done business management. So I'm both a business administrator and an accountant by profession. So it took a long time actually for me to accept the call of God and to just say, let me quit and be full-time in ministry, because the first thing I was looking at was actually provision. I was thinking, how then do I provide for myself and for my family? And thank God I was not married at such a time rather. So when the call came, I had to resign from work. And it was so funny that within the same year we established the church was the very year that I married. Yeah, so it was not easy financially, but the Lord came through, starting with the wedding, obviously. People came through, gave, and this is somebody who was working as an accountant and has quit work to work for God full-time. So I had to differentiate between work and the job, because these are two different things. There's a difference between work and the job. Work is something you're born to do, and the job is something you do just to earn a living. So for me as a pastor, to be honest with you, the 8 years that I've been in full-time ministry, I have seen the Lord's hand. I think my wife will bear witness that we've never struggled financially, except the first years of the ministry. The Lord has been there for us. Our children go to good schools, and there's never a day that would say we don't have school fees, or we don't have fuel, we don't have money for this and for that. The Lord has just been there in time whenever we need Him to provide. So my word of encouragement to every pastor out there, there are some that feel maybe this work is so hard. I want you to understand that God's provision is in 3 dimensions. There are times God can give you what is not enough. It's a season, it's a process. And there are times when God can give you what is enough. And there are times when God can give you what is more than enough. So it's all seasonal. So what I can advise is, do not look at yourself. Look at the one that has called you, unless if you called yourself. But if God really called you, He would definitely provide for whatever you need, because that's what He called you for.
May 21st.
7th of July.
We have to. We just have to. We just have to, because a birthday, you have to celebrate a woman who's given you children, a woman who stood by you, like also a man who's given you a different name, So yes, I think birthdays, yes.
Well, I would say yes, but not as big as we used to be then on birthdays before we had children. We do celebrate each other's birthday, but not as it used to be, because now we have children, obviously. So we make it big for our children, and we make sure that for them it's bigger than ours. Yeah, but we don't go without celebrating each other's birthday.
My name is Fiona Mumba.
My name is Maxwell Mumba, and this is how we met.